Hi, my name's Lloyd Stokes, and this is our new podcast. This is Effing Hard, which is the podcast designed to shine a light on what it's truly like to build and scale a business. Today, I am joined by Mark Wright. Mark and I have known each other for a long time, actually. When I was kind of calculating our background and where our paths crossed, it's been well over 10 years. And Mark, famously, originally, I guess, was known for being the Apprentice winner in 2014, and went on to found a number of different companies over the last 10 plus years. Mark, thanks for joining me.
Lloyd, good to be here. I'm here firstly because of our friendship and our friendship before I was the Apprentice winner. That means a lot to me, but mainly because of the name of the podcast. It's the first, this is effing hard. If that sums up business more in one line, I don't know anything else that does it better. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this just before we came on, and saying that the idea that Martin and I had was just this concept that we've both lived and breathed and worked in early stage businesses, and have a networks of people in early stage businesses. And without fail, without exception, there are more time. The majority of time, it is hard, and actually, there are very few times when it's easy. So I'm glad you like the name, Mark. Tell me a bit more. Let's get into it. Tell me a bit more around kind of where you are right now, and what's going on in life for you at this moment in time. And also, let's talk a little bit more about before that, and Climb Online, and the business that you had there.
Well, physically, right now, I'm sat in Broadbeach waters in Australia. So it's evening time here. And I left the UK about 12 months ago, a bit longer now, a bit over 12 months ago, and have been setting up my life here in Australia. I'm currently the CEO of a company called Wright on Investments, which is my own investment vehicle. And I invest in startup companies around the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. And I work with their founders to help them scale up their businesses. And, I felt that when I left my business, Climb Online, as you said at the start, I'm most well known for winning the TV show, the BBC Apprentice. And off the back of that, Alan Sugar and I founded a digital marketing agency called Climb Online. It became a super successful business. And the sale of that left me as a relatively wealthy person. And I felt with the money I had from that business and the knowledge that Alan Sugar imparted on me for 8.5 years, I owed it to other entrepreneurs to help them get on this journey of success. One, because I love business, but also it is so hard. It is so hard. And most people would give their left arm to have a mentor like Richard Branson or Alan Sugar or Grant Cardone. And I've had the pleasure of working with these types of people very closely for a long period of time. And I hope I can be that person in the future that helps a few more businesses across the goal line. So right now, my biggest business is in aviation. I own a school for pilots here in Australia, training people to be pilots. I have property companies everywhere in Australia, New Zealand, and the UK, and lots of little startups that I'm working with. But what I've learned over my time is doesn't matter whether it's aviation, medicine, marketing, whatever, all businesses are very, very similar. It's just about people, processes, price, all of that stuff. And when you get it right, they all go up. And, the biggest common fallacy I hear is it doesn't work like that in this industry. Yes, it does. Most businesses are exactly the same. And it's just about making it simple and getting things correct at an infrastructure level.
It's that theme I was saying to you before. In this first series, I've interviewed now. I've interviewed 7. I've got 3 more to do, and I know Martin's done a few. And those themes around people in particular, actually, and not because naturally my background is recruitment focused. It's just that is one of the biggest themes that continually comes up, is the things that they need to get right are the people. The things that keep them awake at night are the people. It's the levers that you've pulled are the people. So it's so consistent, and it's interesting that you say that there's no discernible difference across lots of different industry and sectors, because I think people too often I see them getting fixated on the fact that they must find people within their industry and they must be able to find experts within their industry to be able to be successful. And I just don't think it's true.
It's not true at all.
Fundamentally.
You're looking for attitude. You can pretty much train. Okay, I'm not going to go and stand in a court and recite the law or perform open heart surgery tomorrow. But there's not. Like, I'll give you an example. I bought this pilots business. We train people to be pilots, and I was sitting in the meetings, and everyone spoke to me like I'm an idiot because I'm not a pilot. They're saying, "Well, in this industry, blah 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 blah." So I just went and got my license. I went and got my pilot's license, and went back and said, "Yeah, here. It's not that hard because." When you have the right attitude, when you're willing to apply yourself and work at anything is actually possible to get the training to do so. And what you want is malleable people that will come in with a good attitude, that treat their colleagues and customers with respect and whatever. If you've got that, you can teach someone anything. And that's what I try to instill in a lot of these people. If I'm going to invest in a business, I want to invest in someone that has experience in the market. Everything else, people we're going to employ, we can teach them.
Agreed. Completely agreed. This entrepreneurial journey that you've been on through life, when did that start? Yeah, when you were growing up as a young boy in Australia, what did you want to do? What was the plan?
I wanted to be a socceroo, which is what we call that's what we call football here in Australia. I loved soccer. I love football. So I didn't think about business. I didn't think about anything else. I just wanted to play football 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's all I cared about. It just turns out I wasn't fantastic at it.
Not the next Tim Cahill.
No, I was a massive Leeds United supporter because they had, Harry Kewell and Mark Viduka and all the Aussies used to play for Leeds United. So we used to get up and watch it in England, and that's what really brought the passion for the UK and England out in me as a young boy. Is that's where all the football was played. But I think what gave me that entrepreneurial spirit was two things, really. Both my mum and dad run small businesses. My dad has a car garage here. He's a mechanic, and he had a small car garage. He still has it today, 23 staff. And my mum owned a chain of hairdressing salons. She had 3 salons, about 10 staff. So the conversation at the dinner table was always about how we're going to pay the rent, how much should we pay this employee, how much should we charge for this product. So I guess you are a product of your environment at the end of the day. So the conversation from my parents was always about business. After school, we used to sit in their businesses. We used to answer the phones. We used to sweep up the floors. So my whole life, all I knew was you finish school and you go and run a business, because that's what my parents did. And I think once I left school, I had a crack at the football career, which didn't result in too much. And then I started, my passion for business was just getting out there and trying things and running different things. I started as a personal trainer. I worked in restaurants. I did all of this stuff until one day I found digital marketing, and I was never good at any job I ever did. When I was working in restaurants, my handwriting was poor, so I couldn't read my writing. When I got to the till, I was a crap bartender, all of this stuff. But when I found digital marketing, it was the first time that I enjoyed what I was doing. It was the first time I was really good at what I was doing. And I was just passionate about it. And, you hear that thing about you've got to do what you're passionate about. It was the first time I felt that work wasn't a job. And I knew that's what I was going to be good at. And just one thing went to a next. I found a good job in digital marketing, and I put a business plan together and took it on the Apprentice. And as they say, the rest is history.
It certainly is. It certainly is. I think it's probably for another podcast, because this is geared towards the challenges of scaling and growing a business. But I love that. I don't think enough young people, in particular, go and do lots of different jobs to work out what they actually really enjoy doing and what they really are passionate about. I think that it's hard. It's hard. Is it hard? I don't know if it is harder nowadays. I just think people don't do it enough. So I see lots of young people who I talk to who either are they can't find what they think they want to do, or they're not sure. I'm just like, go and get a job. Just go and
Yep.
get a job, do it, see if it works. If it doesn't work, go and get another job. Doesn't
When I
matter.
speak at schools, that's exactly what I say. Go out and try as many different things as possible. Look at the years of sort of 17 to 30 as a free roll. Go and be a bartender, a car cleaner, work in a restaurant, be a chef, try mechanics, do everything. And but my mum and dad want me to go to university. Okay, but imagine if you go to university to study whatever it is you're going to study, and you spend 4 years on it and you hate it. That is a disastrous situation. That's now 4 years down the Swanee that you'll never get back. You need to go and try things, and one day the light bulb will go off, and it may be something your parents have never done or considered, and that you've never done or considered. I would have never told you as a kid I was going to be in digital marketing. One, because it didn't exist when I was a kid. My parents certainly didn't do it. And it was sort of new and weird, and no one understood what the words SEO or PPC meant. So if it wasn't from trying lots of different things, I would have never stumbled across it, and I wouldn't have the career and the fortune and all the things I've got today.
It's exactly that. It's exactly that. I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. You've talked about your parents, and I think for, again, other interviews I've done like this, there's for founders, there's often that link of, one or both parents have run their own businesses. It just creates, like you said, you said it perfectly. The dinner table conversations are all about work and business, so you can't help but be immersed in that. But who else, when you reflect back, either recently or earlier on in your career, who do you feel like have been the biggest influences?
Well, there's three people for me that have driven my sort of life's, you'd call them mentors or otherwise. My dad and my granddad are the two biggest ones. My granddad was a businessman, and he always spoke about the importance of having money in your pocket, being able to support yourself as a man, looking out for your family. It was really instilled in me as a young age, very old school. You make money, you look after your family, you be dependable, you turn up on time, that sort of stuff. And my dad is a hard bastard. He is a hard, probably the only person in the world I'm scared of. And he used to just, I'll give you an example. I got into the final of The Apprentice. The year I won The Apprentice, 75,000 people tried out. I made it into the final two. Most people would say that's pretty good going. And the final episode is filmed live. So my parents could come over to the UK and watch it. And I called and said, will you come over and watch the final episode of The Apprentice? He said, I'll only come if you're going to win. I don't want to come all the way over there to England to watch you come second. And he used to, like, we have these things in Australia called athletics days. I think you call them sports days in the UK, where you do running events and all this sort of stuff. They had a parents' one, and my dad used to come, and he used to demolish the other dads by like a margin that was embarrassing for the other dads. And he used to use it as a lesson to say, that's how it's done. When you compete, you do it to win. You always come first. Everything was like a lesson about discipline, about winning, blah, blah, blah. So that was instilled in me from a very young age. And then obviously in later years, the last 8.5 years, I've worked with Alan Sugar. And there was a lot of similarities from my dad and him and whatever. And I think, how tough my granddad and my dad were on me, it set me up for the mentoring I was to receive from Alan Sugar, because it was very tough love. It was, out of the frying pan into the fire, a lot of tough language, a lot of crazy emails, crazy phone calls and texts. And I tolerated it well, because I lived with my dad for 18 years before that. So,
Sure.
those people had the biggest impact on me, and it made me ready for business. Lord Sugar's advisor told me on my second day working for him, to survive in business, you need a rhinoceros skin. You need to be able to get up every day and handle anything that comes at you. And I think my upbringing and those three people had prepared me for business.
My dad sounds very much like your dad. He Very, very much like your dad. My dad, as a very good sportsman when he was younger, very good athlete. Um, I'll give you an example of my dad. So my dad was a military family. His brother, so he grew up in Germany in German military boarding schools, and his brother is about 8 years older than him, I think. And so when my dad went to secondary boarding school, my uncle had already been and had set all the records for 100-meter sprint, triple jump, long jump. He was up on the board. And my dad was like, day one, I went in there, looked at the board and was like, I'm going to beat every single one of his things. And by the time he left, he'd smashed him. He'd done absolutely everything. Um, my dad also, to this day, uses any think of any successful sports person who consistently comes second. There are some people who just fail to get over the line regularly, and he'll use those as a reference point for conversation. So when he's talking to my so when he's talking to my 7-year-old daughter, he'll be like, Francesca, you don't want to be a so and so. Insert that sports person. For a long time, it was actually Tom Daley, the diver, the British diver, because he kept getting silver, and he was like, "You don't want to be a Tom Daley, do you?" And then Tom Daley won gold, and I was like, "Dad, you can't use Tom Daley anymore." So he moved on to the next person. So
I think our old men would get on really well. But
definitely would.
there's probably a deeper thing here, and we probably need a lot of counselling. But it drives a lot of success from our daddy issues.
I think it drives. Yeah, I think when you reflect on it, largely it drives good behaviours, right? It drives good business behaviours and good characteristics. There is a balance, I think, and my dad certainly, as he's getting older, is getting a bit soft around the edges. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
hope that starts to happen from my dad. I mean, he used to still to today. He calls me. He makes sure I've shaved. Collared shirt. You turn up 15 minutes before. You leave 15 minutes after. All these things have been instilled in me from a very young age.
I love it. I love it. What's the It could be at Climb Online, and actually maybe that's a reference point for so many other businesses that you're involved in and that you see. But is there a moment in time at Climb Online that you pinpoint and go, "Wow, that was by far the hardest. That was the hardest moment. That's the hardest part." And obviously there'll be loads of these, and it might be
Mm.
really hard to pinpoint one. But is there one that you maybe saw then and consistently see in other businesses where you go, "That is the hardest point"?
There's, as you say, there's so many times. The first 2 years at the business of any startup I've worked in, but Climb Online, was almost impossible how hard that was. I mean, in terms of the work ethic that required, the ability to handle the stress and pressure of it, and just the mental toll it took on me as the founder was incredible. I mean, I went through COVID. We lost 42% of our business in one day of recurring customers. So
Wow.
there's no specific day. It's just lots of, the start was really hard. COVID was really hard. There were certain things where we'd lose our biggest client in a day, or we'd lose our top employee, and just moments where I would come home and thought, I don't think there's a tomorrow in this scenario. And it took tolls on my health, and on my weight, and all of this sort of stuff. Where particularly the first years, I drunk way too much. I think I was probably using booze as a way to cope with the stress and the pressure of being a young founder. When I won the show, I was 24, and I'd never founded a business before. So I went from being a new startup founder. I was also famous as well, which was a new sort of thing that I was facing. I was
Yeah.
dealing with,
Yeah.
having a profile and having lots of followers on social media and attention from girls. And that's a lot of stuff to take your eye off the ball of a business that needs 100% of your attention. So there was just so much happening that, I'll probably reflect on it when I'm an old man and think, how in the hell did I actually do it? Because I don't know how I did it. I just kept going every single day until it was done.
there is an element of a big element of just fact in that statement, though, isn't there? That it doesn't matter how hard it is, you've still got to get up the following day and go again. There's no. Sometimes it doesn't have to be any more complicated than that.
I think that's kind of the key to uh, business success. Is it is hard every day. There's an element, and there's days that are impossible, that you're sure it's going to fail or whatever. You just have to keep going, and
Mm.
even if you can't see a way through, just turn up anyway. So just turn up and start doing your email, start doing your calls, whatever it is, and you start finding a way again. And I always feel this energy in me where I feel sort of I lose the will to live, and then something good will happen, or another deal will come in or whatever, and then there's hope here. And it's just riding that wave every day. And as I've gotten more experienced, the things don't hit me as much.
Yeah.
I'm far less emotional now, and particularly since I've had kids and some big wins and some big losses. What it's resulted in is, at the end of the day, if I can come home and see my kids and have a hot meal and whatever, as long as my family's okay, uh, and I'm still alive, everything else is sort of fine. Who cares about your biggest or smallest client? And who cares about that employee telling you such and such? It's all sort of part of the game. And if you learn to treat business as a game, and you and your family are fine, nothing else matters. And the more you treat it like that, you make better decisions.
I completely agree. I have a thing that I say in the office regularly, and I've said for longer than is longer than some care to hear it anymore. But I'm just like, there's two things I say. If someone comes in the morning and they're feeling, something's not gone well, or they've had a bad start to the morning or whatever, I'm like, don't worry, a good day's recruitment will sort that out.
It's true.
And the counter to that is, when it is when the shit's hitting the fan and it's really going bad, I'm like, don't worry, it's just recruitment. You know, we're it's
Exactly.
it. We're not performing open heart surgery. We're not saving lives. We're trying to help people with their careers, which of course is really, really important. But equally, sometimes it just goes wrong, and that's okay.
And
It's
that's fine. And you don't know what that means for tomorrow. You don't know what losing that deal could mean. You might get a bigger deal because you didn't have that, or whatever. It actually doesn't matter. Just do your best, be professional, whatever. And it will be fine. And I've lost so much sleep. And I remember when we used to get customer cancellations, and this is why I'm successful, by the way, because I really care. We used to get a staff resignation, or we'd get a customer cancellation, and I would feel sick in the pit of my stomach. And I could sometimes physically want to be ill and like dry reach and things, because I cared that much that a cancellation or whatever, an argument with the supplier or whatever, I would feel physically ill. And it probably took years off my life, and definitely nights off my sleep and all of that sort of stuff. But I can't say I care that much anymore. I'd be lying.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I think that one of my biggest motivators and one of the few things that might keep me up at night is the idea that somebody else thinks I'm doing a shit job.
Yeah.
That's a massive motivator for me. It always has been. It always will be. I just can't handle the idea that someone goes, "Oh, those guys aren't very good. They don't do a good job." And it sounds like for you that's been a big driver as well. What I mean, you said now you can handle it a lot better, but what, if anything, today in business do you find still keeps you up at night?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing now. The way I came to peace with it is, I'm a big fan of Steve Jobs, and I'm a big fan of Apple. I think they're the sort of gold standard in terms of business practices. And the way I think of it is everyone that's got an iPhone, are they happy with it? Probably not. And the more customers you get, the more staff you get, the bigger you get, the more successful you get, the more people you're going to piss off and are going to be unhappy and think you are doing a shit job. And the truth is, you're not. You're just talking to more people because you're better at what you're doing. And we can't control that. All I can control is each day when I get up and sit at my desk, I do the best that I can do. And if I'm
Mm.
the only times I get upset with a day if I've left something on the table. If I go for
Okay.
a run and I know I didn't do my best, if I, leave a couple of emails in the inbox that I should have dealt with, I've let myself down. I've not held myself to my own standards. And then I have a problem with that. But if I do the best I can and someone's still pissed off, that's kind of their problem, to be honest, at that point. So I've done the
I
best
agree with
I
that.
can. So that's sort of where I've got to, but that's taken years and years of refinement to get to that point. And kind of, I've done pretty well in the last few years. So, I don't want to say I'm comfortable, but I've got a bit of reputation and backing to help
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, no, but that takes time as well, doesn't it? I think people try and shortcut those kind of things, and it's there's rarely a shortcut to get into that stage. Let's talk about growth, and let's also the counter to that. Let's talk about absolute stinkers. Um, Climb Online.
Yeah.
Is there something that you did there? What do you feel? From those people I've spoken to, there are different points where you maybe implemented something new or changed something or took a different direction, and I always refer to it as a scale lever, but it's something that you did which you just went, wow, that was much more successful than I ever could have imagined.
Well, I I know the answer to this better than anything else because it changed my life. The biggest mistake I made very early on was I hired too many crap people. I won an investment of £250,000. So what I tried to do and what I thought was the right thing was hire as many employees as possible on like 18, 19 grand. And that couldn't have been a worse decision because I ended up with poorly qualified and skilled people, the wrong people. Um, and they were just young and sort of a bit naive. And what happened was they weren't very good at the job. I was putting too much
Mm.
pressure on them, and they created bad customer reviews, reputational issues, whatever. And where the rubber really started to hit the road, and I was a bit naive as well because I was young and I thought bigger was always better. More employees, more turnover, I'm more successful. It couldn't have been further from the truth. What you want is less employees of a better skill and better nature and higher profits. Forget about turnover and all of that sort of stuff. It doesn't matter. What you want is quality of service and work and quality of individual. And I would rather have a business of 5 people that's making 3 million quid rather than 130 staff and I'm making 100 grand because all the wages and I need X amount of computers and desks. But it took me a long time to learn that, and I wish someone slapped me in the face really early on. But you've got to learn that lesson, I guess, by sort of paying the bills and the checks and whatever. But in the latter years, where I got the success was I spent more money getting the right people in, paying them
Mm.
much better salaries, but remunerating them through profit share models and shares in the business and that sort of stuff. And their care and character in the business really went through the place because they were part of the success. They were getting percentages of the business success, and they were a
Yeah.
better person to begin with. And the turnover just 10x'd, profits 10x'd. They were bringing in better people. And what you find is if you've got a better individual in the business and they're highly motivated, they police out the poor people themselves. You don't have to manage that process. So, and they bring all the ideas in. Oh, we need this software, we need this process, blah, 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 because they want to increase their income. So, yeah, biggest issue, cheap hires. Best resolution, more expensive hires on profit share. And, by the end of the business, I wasn't doing anything. I'd had such good people in place across the business that I'd made myself technically redundant. And that made me able to sell the business without an earnout as well.
Yeah. I know we were talking before this. I've I've followed the whole journey of Climb Online and still have some great relationships there from the leadership team that you had and just the quality of leadership team you ended up with, who actually you kind of went on that whole journey together, really. Certainly the likes of Lindsay and Mike.
Yes.
I just think so many companies would love to have that group of people together, because if you get that group of people together, you're going to do amazing things.
Yeah, and I mean, creating a culture and that founder team is really, that bubble is really important, because that sort of bleeds through the whole organization. And, you get one or two rotten apples in that, you can rot the whole tree. So, um, I'm not a great coach. I'm an inspirational leader. And I was able to hire good coaches that could teach. And I was able to set a vision and really charge in that direction. And they would implement it. But my mistake was I got so obsessed early on with, we must turn over 50 million so I can be on all the awards. And we must have 100 employees because that sounds better than 10. Now I can see, it's forget about all of that stuff. I'd rather have a much lower turnover and pay less things like sales tax and all of that. I'd need less computers and less salary with less desks and all of this stuff. So worry about quality. And just as much as one employee can change a whole business, one customer can as well. It's about getting after the right customers that you have sort of shared principles with, that you can grow with on that journey as well. And, it, it is all experience. I was much more about, stack them on, pile them on, bring all the customers in, bring all the staff in, because if people think I've got a massive business, that is much better than, the right type of business. And now all I do is talk to the people I work with about quality. Is that a long-term relationship? Is that a long-term customer? If they're not going to sign up to a 2 or 3 year contract, we're not interested. And I think that my perspective has changed.
Yeah, I saw that journey that you went through. So, but also I would say that what was really interesting for me, because certainly in the latter years, you and I would really not get to speak that much, but I'd do a lot more of my conversations with Lindsay and Mike, for example, and they knew you so well that they go, oh, that's just Mark. But they did it in a way where you all complimented each other. So, but you knew it so well that you were like, Lindsay was like, I'm not going to get Mark into that. I'm not going to get Mark into that interview because I know what's going to happen. So I'm going to bring him in at this stage of the interview. But it's having that flexibility and that understanding of those senior people together that I think builds relationships. It's very culture focused. It's very, people come in and they go, they come into that environment and they see that level of understanding around the senior leadership team. Which, if you flip it on the other side, why do so many people leave businesses when they join earlier stage businesses? It's because they see the cracks, they see the challenges within the senior leadership team. So yeah, no, I think
what's funny on that as well is Lindsay and Mike would bring me ideas that were utterly, in my mind, mental. And, I would say that 80% of the things that Lindsay would pitch to me, I disagreed with fundamentally at my core. And the reason I have a Lindsay and had a Mike on either side of me is because if I ran the business, I'd have no bloody employees left. Everyone would have quit a long time ago, because I see the world from a very, you come in at 8 in the morning. If you start at 9, you're shaved, you wear good clothes. We don't work from home. We work in the office. There's no dogs, blah, 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 blah. There's no pot plants. We sit there and we get the job done until it's done. Now, not many people want to work in that environment. Lindsay would have the beer trolley and the music and the atmosphere and the culture and all of these things. And Mike had his stuff as well. And what we did is complement each other so that we had an atmosphere that was good to work in. We had a good discipline about the delivery and what we were producing. And no matter how much we disagreed with one another, and we disagreed with each other a lot, and we would have some pretty active meetings, we listened to each other. And that was really important. And, a lot of the awards we won around culture and the retention of staff and all of this stuff, nothing to do with me. It was nothing to do with me at all. It was ideas from Lindsay and the people in the business, but I had to listen to them and I had to implement them. So, having people you disagree with is important, and having your ears open is important as well.
Yeah, I agree. Like that came up yesterday in another conversation, and again, I think there's certain things that I cover off when we do these interviews that will be consistent themes, but I think that point around healthy conflict within a leadership team is huge. I feel like we've covered so many of the kind of like myths and things that exist already, but one of the questions that Martin and I came up with at the very beginning of doing this, which we absolutely loved, and we've sent to loads of people and said this is a great question, which is there anything that we haven't covered so far today that you see and is perpetuated out there on social media platforms or through people that you know, which you just think is the biggest load of BS when it comes to scaling a business?
Well, as my darling wife will tell you, I sit in bed at night watching Instagram reels, doom scrolling as most do. And I get infuriated to the point where she hears me effing and blinding and screaming. And she says, "Why do you watch it? Because every night you sit here blowing up at these Instagram entrepreneur accounts." Because I can't disagree with them more from how they tell people you need to do this, this, and this to be successful. You need to get up at 4 a.m. in the thing and wipe your face with the banana and put it in the thing. And you need to go to the gym for 2 hours and meditate and journal and all this stuff. I mean, I would be exhausted. I'd never get any work done. And, the biggest myth is that there is a list of things you need to follow to be successful in business or as an entrepreneur or whatever. You need to do what is authentic to you. You need to do what is right for you and where you are in your journey. Some days I go to the gym. Some days I don't. Some days I do things really well and some days I don't. And there is no rule book to this game. It is what works for you and for your business and for your industry that will ultimately work. And I think as long as you stay authentic to yourself, look, I swear I'm very imperfect as a person. I have lots of flaws and lots of good things, but I always am true to who I am. And I do it in my style, and it has worked bloody well for me. And I think if you try to copy anyone else's style, it won't work. So listen, if you go to the gym in the afternoon, if you're a big fat mess or whatever, who cares? Do it how you want to do it, and do it what works for you and your family, and don't worry about anything else. And that's the best advice I can give you is fucking don't listen to anyone but yourself, and try and be better than the person you were yesterday, and you'll be all right.
I love that. I think you've answered 3 questions in one there, because I was going to ask you as well, what's your one piece of advice for founders? But I think I think that last point is just so important to just, you could spend a lot of time questioning what you're doing, or reflecting on, you're comparing yourself or trying to benchmark, which is the world we live in nowadays, right? That's so many people spend time doing it. But in my head, I'm like, how much wasted time and energy is that are you spending doing those things that could be channeled into something way more productive? Yeah, how much more could your
100%.
business benefit from just channeling all that energy into, don't worry about what other people are doing. I think everyone does it at some point when they're building a business. You can't help but not. I see other recruitment companies and I go, wow, look at what they're doing. They're doing these awards and they're doing these, they've got like the top 100s of whatever. And I'm like, at the end of the day now, I'm just like, I'm doing my own thing. We're on our own journey. Like, my journey's not your journey. And actually, I'm okay with that. And you should be okay with that as well. And actually, the other thing is, and I know I'm supposed to be interviewing you, and I'm probably sharing more.
No, please, I find it fascinating.
I don't know how you feel about this, and you might have a very different view. I used to, when I was earlier on in my career and in building my own recruitment business, I used to have this attitude of I want to take everybody else down. If there's 10 other companies in my sector, I want to take them all down. I want to be, and now I actually think there's enough opportunity out there for all of us, and also I actually have a lot of respect for a lot of those people who are doing the same thing as me, because I know how bloody hard it is. I know what a challenge it is, and so I don't have that same feeling anymore. I think actually, if you're doing good stuff, good for you. if I can learn from something good for you. I'm not about taking you down. I'm just about doing my own thing.
Yeah. What's great about living in Australia is we don't have a company's house. And I have no idea how as Mike and Lindsay will tell you, I used to spend my evenings on company's house in the UK, and I would know all of our competitors' P&Ls off by heart. And I would follow their companies on company's house, and I would go, and my goal was to be the biggest all the time. I had to outdo everyone. And it comes from being a salesman. As I started in sales, and the biggest thing in sales is leaderboards. You know where you are in the team at all time, and you try to be at the top. So when I got into running my own business, I created leaderboards in my own head, in my industry and people I was competitive with. And as I got on and on and on, exactly as you say, I was kind of like, who cares? This is really tough, this stuff. And if you're out there running a business and paying people and paying rent and doing all those things, you're not really in competition with anyone. It's pretty hard just to stay afloat. And particularly, if you're in London or whatever, where rents and things are what they are today, it's difficult. You can't compare any business really, because it depends on location and size and all sorts of stuff. So I kind of got over that. But again, a lot of it comes with time and experience. And, there is a few people who have wounded me on the journey, who have nicked databases and stole clients and stole stuff. And they're not on my Christmas card list, let's say that. But I don't worry about it anymore.
No. I think again, it's that thing of like channeling your energy in the right areas. Last question before we wrap things up. I'm gonna test your resources here. Is there anything else that you would say to founders who are launching and creating business today? Like one last piece of advice, one nugget that you think I'd love to be able to tell everybody in the world this thing.
Yeah, is to leave your ego at the door every day, because my ego has cost me a fortune, and the less I take that in every day, the more money I make and the more successful my business is. Because the thinking that you know it all and is a real problem in the business world, and particularly the businessman world, is ego's important. And you need to give your people confidence in where you and the business is going. But like I said before, if you stop listening to people, listening to your customers, listening to your suppliers, and listening to your staff, you're not going to go too far. And you're not going to go very far very quickly. So the more I've learned to listen to others, and as you said towards the end of the business before I sold it, no one would deal with me, is trust people. People don't come to work to deceive you. They come to work to improve themselves. And if you can convince them through your actions that by improving the business, they improve themselves, we're all going to go further. You're going to get really successful and really rich. So continue to learn, leave the ego at the door, and just go with the process, and you'll be fine.
Mark, you're a great man. You are, and I've really been looking forward to doing this one because I knew that I would get a whole host of just unfiltered, raw insight, which is what it's all about. This is the reason why we set up this podcast, was to have interviews and conversations like this with people who have been there, who have done it, and have learned so much along the way and had some real success. So thank you. I really appreciate you giving me your time, especially finding the time given that you're over in Australia. And I hope that you continue to have huge amounts of success.
Thank you, sir. It's been my absolute pleasure. It's Thursday evening, and my mighty Manly Sea Eagles are about to play, so it's gonna go watch that. But thank you very much, and if anyone's listening to this, please reach out to me on LinkedIn if I can help you with you and your business. But I wish you every success, and thank you for hiring me and looking after me all those years ago.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Good on you, mate.